For most Australians, summer days are spent enjoying the atmosphere of beachside cafes and taking a cool dip as short-term relief from the scorching temperatures produced by the summer heat. Outside the city limits, amongst the grass and trees, it's a different story altogether. Started by lightning, human accidents or worse, deliberate acts of arson, bushfires are a regular feature of the Australian landscape. Today we're going to define the characteristics of bushfire, and if you're one of the many people tasked with responding to or assisting in the recovery from a bushfire, we're going to touch on some of the key survival tactics that will help you become bushfire ready. A general perception about bushfires is that they only occur over the summer season. The reality is the period of high fire danger across Australia exists for over half of the year, and the season start and finish dates differ from state to state. In South Australia, the fire danger period spans over 6 months from November through to April, and sometimes even May. At daybreak, the sun emerges to heat up the ground. Months or even weeks of dry weather has sapped the vegetation of any remaining moisture. As the day gets warmer, humidity levels drop and wind speeds strengthen. By early afternoon, the weather has produced the perfect recipe for a bushfire. A bushfire has started. The fire service has been notified and firefighters are now on their way. However, it's not just firefighters that have been called in. State Emergency Service volunteers, paramedics and police officers are also on their way, and the media has been tasked to provide the public with updates from the scene. The Salvation Army Emergency Service Welfare Unit has been requested to provide catering support to those on the ground. As many have discovered, you don't need to be working on the front line to be caught out by fire. It's a frenzy of activity that affects hundreds upon thousands of people. Attending to a bushfire is a long and arduous task. Your ability to cope with the pressure you'll face will depend on the level of preparation you've taken beforehand. Ask yourself, am I safe? Am I free of injury or illness? Am I unaffected by medication or stress? Is my body free of alcohol and drugs? Am I free of fatigue? And do I have the expertise to deal with the situation? If yes, you need to make sure you're wearing the appropriate clothing before going any further. High visibility overalls or twin-piece turnout gear will help to protect you from the radiant heat, but wear any natural fibres underneath, such as woolen or cotton. A helmet will protect you from falling debris and from burning embers from getting down the back of your neck. Helmets with visors also offer a degree of protection to the face and eyes. You'll also need a pair of gloves, good solid working boots and ear protection in case you're working around heavy machinery.
You should be wearing long clothes. It's a hot day, but it's a fire. You must wear long clothes, long sleeves. Cover yourself up because otherwise you'll be injured.
One of the dangers of facing up to a bushfire is the high level of dense smoke. Smoke clouds are fine particles of dust and ash that can lodge in your eyes and lungs and will make it difficult for you to see clearly and breathe comfortably. To protect yourself from the smoke, wear goggles and a disposable face mask or cloth bandana. Your vehicle should also be equipped to deal with a bushfire. During the fire danger season, always keep in your car a torch, a woolen blanket, a first aid kit, sunscreen, energy food, and plenty of drinking water. You'll also need a portable radio and mobile phone, but keep in mind you may not be able to use them due to black spots. Confirm the location of the fire before you venture anywhere and familiarise yourself with the area you'll be working in, what your role will be, and who you'll need to liaise with. Fire is a process called combustion, a chemical reaction that occurs when 3 elements combine. oxygen, the air we breathe, fuel, such as wood, paper or any other flammable object, and heat. These three elements form what is commonly known as the fire triangle. And fire can be extinguished by removing any one of them. Heat and oxygen can be removed by smothering fire with foam and water. A more proactive method of firefighting is removing the fuel by use of hand tools or earth-moving equipment, or a method used by firefighters called backburning, where vegetation ahead of the fire front is burned under controlled conditions. Because fire cannot repeatedly burn an area, the fire front is deprived of its source of fuel, allowing firefighters to gain control and extinguish the hotspots. How a fire reacts to the environment can vary on the type of fuel, its moisture content and how it's arranged. The weather, including wind speed and direction, the air temperature and humidity levels, and the topography or the lay of the land, such as the degree of elevation and direction of slope. From its point of origin, a fire will typically spread in the direction of the prevailing wind, but that can change in a matter of minutes depending on variations in fuel type, weather and topography. One of the keys to surviving a bushfire is being able to anticipate these changes and adjust your own behaviour accordingly. As the fire spreads, it leaves behind a blackened trail of smouldering burnt fuel. The head of the fire may become so intense that it begins to create new fires ahead of the front, called spot fires.
Next to the freeway on January the 11th, we had a fire on the northern side of the freeway that spotted to the southern side of the freeway. And ended up the fire on the southern side of the freeway was larger than the one on the northern side, purely because it was a spot fire that got away, and because crews were very busy on the northern side, they didn't have the resources to put to the southern side fire.
You can be trapped between 1, 2, in some cases 3 or 4 fires. It's a very, very dangerous place to be.
The findings found that it was a magpie that had caught a light and it had dropped over in Hackett's Hill, 10 k's away from the fire at Mount Muirhead.
It felt like, I don't know, probably 5 minutes between when the spot fires were jumping the road when we were heading into Winilla to when the main fire front come through. So it's a long way in front where the fires can get out ahead of it.
As the fire front pushes through unburned vegetation, fingers of fire spread from either side, increasing the fire's perimeter and making it harder for crews to bring under control. A sudden wind change can turn flanks of the fire into new fronts, burning drastically larger than its original size.
When you've got that high wind, high fuel loading and up a hill, your fire does travel at an extremely fast rate, and it just seems to consume everything in its path.
It just went from blowing from the north around to the southwest, and it blew fire over one of my trucks, and the guys on the back, sort of 2 of them jumped off the truck, you know, and they nearly got caught. But the driver, he was burnt on the face, and that was one of my bloody worst moments.
Fire will always move faster up a slope because wind currents push flames into new fuels, made even more ready to burn by the preceding radiant heat. This picture shows the effect of slope on the spread of fire over a period of 5 minutes. As the fire danger and degree of slope increase, so does the rate of fire spread. On a day of extreme fire danger, a fire burning up a slope of 20 degrees will burn faster than a similar fire on level ground. The colour red indicates what is known as the dead man zone, where the risk of being killed by fire is considered the highest. As a general rule of thumb, for every 10 degrees of slope, the rate of spread for a bushfire will double.
A fire will burn quite strongly and quite quickly uphill, particularly on the warmer the day or the stronger the wind, the quicker it's going to burn as it preheats those fuels in front of it. So it can travel quite quickly uphill. And if you're at the top of the hill, well, basically you're in the dead man zone.
Fire doesn't only spread across the surface of the ground. Fires can be most intense when they begin to spread or crown in the tops of trees. Crown fires are exposed to higher wind speeds, therefore travel faster and are more destructive.
Well, you basically got the top of the trees igniting, and there mightn't be too much, less activity down the bottom, and it's just jumping from treetop to treetop, creating its own fire as it goes, and that can progress, kilometres ahead if you like, just with the spot fires and embers it's throwing forward, but that's pretty swift when you see that happening.
Bushfires are life-threatening, and while many people think the flames are the most deadly, radiant heat serves the greatest danger to human life. Radiant heat is the invisible heat that travels ahead of or above the flames.
Radiant heat comes in front of the fire front, and you're talking, up in near 1,000 degrees Celsius, and that's pretty intense heat.
If you become trapped by an approaching fire, the best protection you have is some form of barrier between you and the radiant heat. Seek refuge behind or inside something, preferably a house or another solid structure. A fire front may take anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes to pass over, and as it does, the atmosphere will be dark, loud, hot and dense with smoke.
It gets very, very noisy, it gets very, very smoky, the wind starts to pick up, it gets dark, and then you know you're in trouble.
They roar like trains at times. I mean, they're just that loud as they barrel through. It's a sound once you've heard once, you'll never forget anyhow.
What we thought were the trees were screaming. You hear this high-pitched screaming every now and again, and it wasn't until after the fire had passed that some of the New South Wales guys told us that they were actually koalas.
When you look at the film footage from the camera fires, you had streets that were completely dark in the middle of the day, but you had continual stream of embers just going right angles to basically the ground across in front of everybody, and that was included in the smoke.
You can't get your breath. You don't know where your breath is coming from sometimes, which happened to us over in Sydney. You feel as though your whole chest is going to come up through your mouth when you're coughing.
It's hot, it's dangerous, it's scary. Black Tuesday is the most excited and scared I've ever been. It's mixed emotions.
It's very claustrophobic because you just physically cannot get away from it. No matter where you turn, there's smoke. So, with goggles, with respiratory protection, it makes it a little easier, but it's still a very, very uncomfortable position to be in when you physically can't get away from the smoke.
Bushfires are a natural part of the landscape, yet alarmingly, most Australians have little understanding about the nature of fires and how to deal with them. People living or working in areas of high fire risk should have already instigated their bushfire action plan and decided on either staying and defending their property or leaving their home at the start of the day, before extreme fire weather sets in. Properties can be saved if people remain on site to extinguish small fires that start in and around the home. Most houses that are ruined in bushfires were destroyed as the result of small fires starting in gutters and windows by sparks and embers following the passage of the main fire front.
It'd have to be in the right part of your house, away from the fire. Once that initial front attacks and gets over with, then you can get out, but that radiant heat is the initial part that really does affect you.
Research into Australian bushfire fatalities show that last-minute evacuation was the main cause of death. Some people choose to stay with their homes until last minute, but in a panic decide to leave. This hasty decision has cost many people their lives and stresses the importance of instigating a bushfire action plan before a bushfire occurs.
There was 14 deaths that day, and most of them were caused by people travelling in smoke and running off the road and running into a tree or something like that.
You've got no perception, you veer off the road very easily. Any obstacle that's going to come up in front of you, well, you've got no time to react to it.
Late evacuation is dangerous and greatly decreases the chances of surviving a bushfire. Smoke reduces visibility and can cause you to crash into trees or other vehicles, trapping you ahead of the approaching fire.
The problem we're going to have is if they leave when a fire's started, that's just too late. So what we're encouraging people to do is on a day of extreme fire danger, in the morning, that's the time you should leave.
Able-bodied people should be encouraged to stay where adequate fire protection measures have been put in place, including prior hazard reduction, adequate water supply, basic firefighting equipment, and the wearing of suitable clothing. If time permits and adequate warning has been provided, young children, aged or immobile people should be taken to a nearby safe haven such as an oval or shopping centre. Sheltering inside a car is a high-risk option and presents an unlikely chance of survival. Parts of the interior can melt and windows can implode, but your chances of survival will be slightly higher than if you're caught out in the open. If you see a bushfire in the distance, carefully pull over to the side of the road to assess the situation. If it is safe to do so, turn around and drive to safety. If you become trapped by fire, find a suitable place to situate the car and shelter inside from the intense radiant heat. Find a clearing away from dense bush and high fuel loads and position your vehicle facing towards the oncoming fire, away from other vehicles and traffic. Turn on any external lights to make the vehicle as visible as possible. The engine may be left running to enable headlights to remain operational without flattening the battery. Turn off the air conditioning and close all doors, windows and vents. Get down below the window and shelter under a woolen blanket to reduce exposure to both toxic gases and high temperatures. Stay inside the vehicle until the fire front has passed and the temperature has dropped outside. Exit with caution and move to already burnt ground. Fire trucks are safer than normal vehicles because they're equipped to withstand a burnover with the use of cabin heat shields and sprinkler systems. Keep the engine and pumps running and turn on the overhead sprinkler system or any external water sprays, and radio your situation to control. If you're the crew of a fire appliance, always have an escape route in mind and keep a reserve of water in the tank for safety and protection.
All of a sudden we were faced with a wall of flame that was probably in excess of 40 to 50 feet high. Trees around us started to explode, and then instincts and our training, I suppose, kicked in, and we moved straight into a burn-over drill, a textbook burn-over drill.
The wind suddenly changed and turned the fire and turned it directly towards the guys. They had absolutely no warning. It was an unforecast wind change. It was just a gust, a gully wind, and completely against everything that we'd been experiencing consistently for the last hour. And it turned the fire down on the guys, and yeah, it was one of the hardest things I've ever watched.
They're your friends and your comrades and your mates, you know, and they're on the back of a fire truck, and if it comes over the radio that, you know, you've had a truck burn over, it's a funny feeling in here, I can tell you. Yeah, and yeah, you are scared. There are times you're scared, real scared.
If you're confronted by a bushfire outside a place of safe refuge, move to already burnt ground, which is likely to be at the bottom of a slope, or an area of minimal fuel load, such as a field or access track. Even large rocks and logs will offer a small amount of protection if bushfire is imminent. Remain calm and don't try to outrun a fire, especially uphill, unless you're completely sure that a safe refuge is handy.
You don't really want to run away, because if you trip over and fall, you could do yourself an injury and you're trapped there straight away. But if you try and go along the slope, away from where the fire's coming up, I wouldn't try and run down the slope through the fire, because you don't know how deep that fire front is, and you don't know what's behind that fire front as well. You could fall into a hole, you could fall over a log. Once again, you're in hot ash, that sort of stuff, you get yourself burnt. But if you run along the slope or across the slope, away from where the fire is, that's probably your best escape action anyway.
In Australia's history of fighting bushfires, many people have died for a number of reasons, including heart attack, falling tree limbs, poisoning from toxic gases, body burns from radiant heat, and entrapment within structures and vehicles. However, the most common threat to those on the fireground is fatigue, anxiety, or worse, heat stroke, where the body's natural mechanism to regulate heat fails.
Heat stress is probably more common than actually burns. Over the years, we haven't actually had too many people with actual burns on their body, but it's all heat stress.
Your body needs to naturally cool itself through perspiration. Wearing the correct personal protective clothing, which is loose and well ventilated, helps your body to control its metabolic temperature. Take regular breaks from the fireground to lower your core temperature, lower your heart rate, and increase your level of alertness. Cool off by resting in a shady area, loosen your clothing and drink plenty of water. Health experts suggest you should drink at least 200 millilitres of water every 15 minutes. Sunburn is also common, so remember to reapply sun cream on a frequent basis. In most cases, paramedics will be on the scene, so seek medical attention if you need it. Your own health won't be the only thing you'll need to look out for. Many other hazards will present themselves both on the ground and in the air. Water bombing aircraft are widely used in the suppression of bushfires. With the support of firefighters on the ground, they're an effective tool that can drop large volumes of water and fire retardant. Not only are they a hazard at the fire front, but you'll also need to keep your distance when they refill and refuel. Fixed-wing aircraft land, refill and take off again in under a few minutes. Heli tankers use a snorkel to suck up water from nearby dams and lakes. If you see an aerial water bomber fly towards you, move away from the fire line and try to find shelter either in a vehicle or under the veranda of a house. If you're out in the open, place tools and equipment away from you, lay low and hold on to your helmet. The foam and retardant dropped by the aircraft is non-toxic, but if you do get doused, rinse yourself with water. Watch your footing because the ground can be made very slippery. Also be wary of dust and ash that can be lifted with the updraft created by heli tanker rotor blades.
You drop 2 tonnes of water onto a tree that's half burnt, there's a fair chance that it may drop limbs. Even if it's not burnt, you drop that sort of water into a tree, there's a fair chance the tree might fall down. Also, obviously, the water itself. I mean, it's got foam and water solution mixed, but you get hit with any sort of volume of water from above, it's got a fair chance it might knock you over and do some damage. So we try to stay well clear of the path of the aircraft.
Be wary not to park under power lines, trees or unstable buildings. It's common for power lines to come down due to excessive wind speeds. Keep at least 8 metres away and always treat them as live. Falling trees are also a threat. Once burnt, hollow trunks and limbs can fall to the ground hours or even days after the main fire front has passed. Always wear your helmet and keep looking up and around for trees with burning limbs. On steep slopes, it is possible for trees to fall and torpedo downhill at dangerous speeds. Listen closely to what is happening around you and react quickly.
It's amazing how many trees do fall over in a bushfire once it's gone through, and it's something to really be aware of.
Bushfires can burn for several days or even weeks, and firefighters will remain just as active throughout the night as they are during the day. Use a lightweight torch to avoid burning branches and stump holes. Wear reflective clothing and never walk anywhere in the dark unless you're sure of the footing underneath. The Fireground is divided up into different sectors and divisions. Many firefighters will also be wearing different coloured helmets with varying reflective striping to reflect their seniority in the chain of command. A staging area and incident command centre is also established at a nearby safe zone, such as an oval, a fire station or another community-based centre. Unless otherwise notified, report to the Incident Command Centre before you venture closer to the fireground. As you enter, you'll find many people wearing vests and tabards, representing different agencies. It's here that much of the behind-the-scenes management occurs, such as planning and logistics. Keeping the public informed of the fire's progress is also a crucial part of incident management. And it's here that information is gathered to create bushfire information and bushfire warning messages. These messages are issued by the CFS to local radio and television stations to not only alert people to the presence of a bushfire, but provide safety advice as well, such as where the fire is burning, what direction it's moving in, the streets, suburbs and towns it's likely to affect, and what people should be doing to prepare for the fire.
Or call the CFS Bushfire Information Hotline on 1300 362 361. Just repeating, the Wollonga Fire on the southern side of Meadows Road, burning between range...
Bushfires are classed in different phases of development. Going refers to a bushfire expanding in size and direction, requiring an active or escalated response. When a fire is classed as contained, its spread has been halted, but may still be burning freely within fire control lines such as earth breaks, paths of retardant dropped by aircraft, or controlled fire lines created by backburning. If a fire is classed as controlled, its entire perimeter has been secured and is not expected to break away. Fire crews will remain at the scene to fully extinguish hotspots. Completed is the time at which the incident is secured and there is no further need for the fire service to remain at the scene. And safe is the term used when it is considered that no further suppression, control action or patrols are necessary. Bushfires can occur accidentally by strikes of lightning, tools that create sparks, electrical faults in fuse boxes, and even hot exhaust from a vehicle driving over stubble or dry grass. Unfortunately though, many fires are deliberately lit, and the only way we can try and prevent that is by assisting the police. This means taking notes of the incident details, such as the time the fire was reported and by whom, the weather conditions, the colour of the smoke and flames, and strange smells such as petrol or kerosene. Report to the police any odd vehicle movement and suspicious behaviour from onlookers. While on the Fireground, you may come across foreign objects that are suspicious or unusual in nature, like metal tins and aerosol cans. Be sure not to touch them. Secure the area from unauthorised personnel and alert the police. Bushfires are unpredictable. Given the trends in bushfire activity over recent years, their frequency and level of intensity is likely to increase. Before entering the Fireground, you should familiarise yourself with the standard fire orders and watch out situations. Update yourself and others with regular sit reps. What's the situation and what will the fire impact on? What are your tactics to help the situation? What resources are here and what else is needed? Who else is here? Are others required? What problems exist or may arise? And how are you maintaining your own safety and the safety of others?
If you're not aware of what's happening on the Fireground and where you're working in relation to a fire, you can very quickly get into some trouble. So we're talking, a couple of minutes sort of things for things to turn quite nasty. And if you're not aware of that, those couple minutes can be quite devastating at the end.
And remember, laces. Establish lookouts and task all members to be alert to changes in fire behaviour. Keep aware of the situation you're in and the hazards around you. Establish and test clear lines of communication. Identify your escape routes and identify your safety zones, remembering that the best safety zone is previously well-burnt ground. Fighting a bushfire is a team effort from all emergency services, but ultimately you are responsible for your own safety and survival. Only you can know if you are truly bushfire ready.